Okay, and good evening, Democrats.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
Good evening,
Democrats.
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 Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Okay, let's try it one more time. I know it's not an enthusiastic moment in Democratic history, but I think we can do better than that if everyone wants to unmute. And let's try it again. Good
Good
evening,
evening.
Good
Democrats.
Good
evening,
evening,
Democrats.
Democrats.
Good evening,
Democrats.
Democrats.
Woo!
Okay, now I'm going to mute everybody again. Okay, good evening in here, out there. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for deciding to be with us at this time in our country's history. And I just wanted to say before we get started and hear from our guests, just wanted to share a few thoughts for myself, and to just remind you that it's okay to feel depressed, dejected, or even, as one club member told me, that they feel in despair right now. That's understandable. We're all people who take progressive activism and politics very seriously. So it's understandable that the national election results would really hurt right now, profoundly. And it's not just that Donald Trump got
People.
elected, it's that and that it's not just that he's going to be president again, but the voters in this country voted for him. That's what I think is really hard. He won the popular vote this time. It's really hard to comprehend this, and I think we're all still trying to grasp what that means, and that's part of what we're talking about tonight. But I just want to make sure that everybody in our club knows that this is your democratic community. We're here for each other through whatever comes next. We've been through this before as a club 8 years ago, and we found, a lot of newly activated Democrats who have since risen into leadership positions, not only in this club, but in the county party and in the state party. So I think everyone should take all the time you need to recover emotionally from this really difficult outcome. And we hope that everyone will find it within themselves to rejoin the fight next year, because we have a lot of work to do. And I think it's really important to remember that political advocacy work is never about just one day. We have to keep at this year in and year out, no matter who wins or loses a given election. We need to um, prioritize and protect vulnerable peoples who are going to be targeted by this administration. And we have to work on redefining what our party stands for, not just how we speak about our issues and communication strategies, but making sure we actually represent solutions to the problems that people care about. And to that point, I think this club has already been leading. The work that we've done specifically in this club over the last few years has led to a rare bright spot for Democrats here in Santa Monica. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about, but this city council election, we swept all 4 seats. Very exciting for those of us in Santa Monica. Uh, I think that those of us who were there were probably at the only happy Democratic election night party in the country. But it was obviously overshined by what was going on at the national level. And I keep coming back to and have been reminded of the part of Kamala Harris's concession speech. And it's how she closed her entire speech. She said, "There's an adage a historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is only when it's dark enough can you see the stars." I know many people feel like we're entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that it is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billions of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. So that I think really resonates for those of us here in Santa Monica right now, because as tragic as it is nationally, as Santa Monica Democrats, It's now our job to be one of those brilliant stars. And Santa Monica can be a beacon to all Democrats trying to figure out the way forward. If we push our new council to be champions of Santa Monica values, we can lead LA, we can lead California, we can lead the nation. This election here in Santa Monica is a big deal, and there's a lot of firsts that I want to acknowledge. The first out gay man on Santa Monica City Council, the first bisexual person in Santa Monica City Council, the first Black man in nearly 50 years. We're going to have the first millennial majority on City Council. All of a sudden, there's everyone but one council member is going to be younger than me. And 2 years ago, they were all older than me. So that's a bit of a change. This is kind of cool for us, for those of us who are you know, California Democrats. We're going to have the first ever California Democratic Party delegate majority. 4 out of 7 of our city council members are going to be members of the or delegates to the California Democratic Party. And as Natalia said in the chat, we're also going to have our renter majority, which is very exciting. Now, this is really cool. This election, I was figuring this out with Mike Feinstein earlier today, is the first time since 1981 that the sitting mayor of Santa Monica was voted out of office.
Wow.
And guess what else happened in 1981? The first and only time that a sitting member of the Santa Monica Democratic Club Executive Board was elected to city council. So history is rhyming here because we've now elected a sitting member of Santa Monica Democratic Club Board, Natalia, who's currently on the call taking the minutes for this meeting, and of course Dan Hall, who was on the board up until he resigned so that he could run in this election. So we've actually elected 2 Santa Monica Democratic Club board members to city council. Very exciting for this club. And I also just want to take a moment to thank all of our coalition partners who made this happen. Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights, of course, Santa Monica Forward, the Community for Excellence in Public Schools, Unite Here Local 11, Streets for All, Stonewall Democratic Club, Westside Young Democrats, the LA County Labor Federation, and of course, the LA County Democratic Party. We could not have done this without all of those organizations, and so we're very grateful and excited to move forward with this new majority. And we're going to get to that. We're going to be drilling down the local issues a little bit later. But first, we're going to hear from our candidates. And before we hear from those guests, I just want to announce our annual holiday party and toy drive will be Sunday, December 8th at Santa Monica Brew Works, late afternoon into the evening. Bring an unwrapped toy. That's the price of admission, and you'll get a free drink ticket. Balances out, basically end up even. Stay tuned to our email blast for more information about the holiday party. And our first membership meeting of 2025 will be Wednesday, January 29th. Save the date. So now we're going to continue our tradition of hearing from our candidates who, win or lose, were endorsed by us. In this case, they all, the ones that are here tonight anyway, are all successfully elected. So we're going to go through the fields, including the fields where nobody ran against the candidates, the minimum number of candidates, so they got a free pass this year. And we're going to start with the Santa Monica College Board, and we'll hear first from our friend Rob Rader. Rob?
John, thank you, and thanks for your very kind words to all of us, and kind not to me, but to all of us for acknowledging how it felt to be going through this election. I actually went off to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the last 2 weeks to work on voter protection for Kamala Harris. And the energy I thought in Philadelphia was fantastic. Although often what I was watching in the national news was not as encouraging. But um, I think that we ran a really good campaign in Philadelphia, certainly, and I'm happy to if anyone's interested in that, I'm happy to talk about it in greater depth. But as you know, I have a commitment at 7:30. Um, you've already talked about the Brown Act and the danger of having too many people talk about substantive issues, so I'm not going to hit those. But my endorsement interview was posted on the website, and I'm happy to chat about any of those issues again, should anyone want to contact me. But as a member of this club since 2002, 2003, I don't know. I think now I'm older than a lot more of the members of the Santa Monica City Council. I don't know if that's a function of John and my age or that people are getting younger. I wish it were more that people are getting younger, but I suspect it's that I'm getting older. Um, but this club makes a difference. And we learned from prior elections and we did course corrections. And I think that is also another way that we can lead for Democrats in this country to listen to what we are hearing from our voters, to learn from both technical errors, but also from policy issues and how to become a better Democratic Party that can do more to uplift people. One of the reasons I'm so proud to be part of Santa Monica College, and people have heard my stump speech before, but I believe education is transformative, and I'm really proud to have another opportunity. And I have to always think, can I still make a difference? And I am convinced that we can continue improving Santa Monica College and delivering enormous value to the city and to this region, and that Santa Monica College has an important mission in that. I don't want to talk too much. Unfortunately, I'm an elected official and therefore often can't resist. But I thank you for your support. It made a huge difference for me. Even though there wasn't an actual race, it still made a huge difference because it was setting us up for an enormous success. And I appreciate all the efforts that people here did, even the ones that I don't even know about. And I'm sure there are many of those. So thank you again very, very much.
Thanks, Rob. Margaret, are you here? Yeah, so some folks aren't able to be here right now. We have a hearing of the LATCO going on at this moment. Malibu is back at it, trying to split off and starting over again. So with their unification effort. So just to let everyone know, anybody who couldn't make it, we are going to have them come back at our January meeting to do the similar thing. So now let's hear from our newest member of the Santa Monica College Board, Anastasia Foster.
Hey, everybody. Longtime member of the club, not first time caller, not at all. I thank you. Everything Margaret keeps telling people over and over again who say that we didn't have to run a race, that we had to run a race. And she's partly right and she's partly wrong. Folks for the rent board and folks for the college board, and to some extent the school board, we still had to work for about a year in advance, making our candidacy known, raising money, and doing all of the club questionnaires and interviews. And it was a wonderful experience, as it always is. But more importantly, it allowed Kay and Phyllis and Margaret and Rob and myself to turn our attentions to the other races locally and nationally that we felt were much more important. And so that was one of the side benefits of not having to run a full campaign. And I will just say, as a Democrat, the most interesting questions I had to answer at the hundreds of doors I knocked or called or texted was, but I thought everybody was a Democrat. And I hope that's something we'll unpack during this meeting and during future meetings. That in many cases, many of the folks we were in opposition to were technically Democrats, though maybe folks who've put a lot of effort into Democratic efforts for a long time maybe need to come up with some great definitions and great talking points for that moving forward in future cycles, because I have a feeling that's going to come up for all of us again. But I want to thank the club for their support, and I'm going to keep it short and just say, please let us know what we can do to further serve you and the community at our wonderful college. Thank you.
Thanks, Anastasia. And now we'll hear from our new Rent Control Board commissioners, starting with Kay and Breeze.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank the club for your endorsement early this summer. I was really fortunate to not have to run an entire campaign this election season, but I did have a few months where I got to get my feet wet. In addition to earning this club's endorsement, I did seek and earn the endorsements of SMER, the West Side Young Dems, Stonewall Democratic Club, and the California Democratic Renters Council. But I'm especially appreciative of how thoroughly and seriously this club takes its endorsement process. I really enjoyed taking part in the interview and the debate process. Now that I'm on the rent control board, I'm looking forward to educating renters on their rights under Santa Monica's rent control law, and applying the laws fairly and impartially on the dais. I'm always available to meet with both renters and landlords alike and to discuss any concerns. As we all know, unfortunately, Prop 33 didn't pass, so I won't be able to take part in strengthening our existing rent control law on a large scale, but I'm committed to looking into how we can close smaller loopholes so that we can fix and benefit our community. For example, Chair Leslie and I co-sponsored an agenda item, and staff is going to be returning with a report tomorrow night, looking to discuss how our rent control team is serving our bilingual population. And looking to the future, I'm looking forward to working collaboratively with my fellow commissioners to ensuring that our city continues to be a leader and a champion in rent control for the entire state of California. So thank you so much for your endorsement, and yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Kay. How about Phyllis? Phyllis, you there?
Phyllis
Hi,
is be
I'm
muted.
here. Can
There
you hear
she
me now?
is. Yeah. Hey,
Oh,
Phyllis.
yes, hi. I'm honored to be here with all of you, and I think one of the most wonderful parts of meeting so many people, meeting all of you, and so many people who are so dedicated and to community service and making lives better for all of us. And it's been an honor. It's really been an honor. When I first became involved, sometime in April, November 5th seemed so far away, and here we are. And I want to congratulate all of the excellent candidates, our excellent candidates on the local level, and all of the many people who gave their heart and souls to make it happen. And I am really looking forward to working with Kay and the other rent control commissioners to steward our rent control law in an impartial manner, fairly and conscientiously, and to give it my all. And I'm very honored and humbled by the support I've received. And I want to thank the Dem Club. I mean, you, John, and all of you, you're just, I'm so inspired by all of you. And I'm look forward to continue working with you and serving our community. And thank you for that opportunity.
Thanks so much, Phyllis. Glad that you'll be on the rent control board now. And now let's hear from our school board candidates. And let's see, our Maria.
Hi, good evening. I think I might be the only one. I think John and Jen might have gone to the hearing this evening in Malibu. I'm not sure.
That's
Um,
okay. Yeah, we'll hear from them next time. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much. I think it was for me, not the first time around for me. So it was great. I mean, I appreciate all your support that you gave us, and it was great, even though we didn't the candidate, we still had to run somewhat of a race because we were on the ballot. But it gave us the opportunity to be able to, again, to really go out there and campaign for our, our city council members, which is great. I think one of the key things that this party, this club does the best is that the actual card that that's what I was telling John early during the campaign, is that was a great, endorsement card. And that was a real key, because everywhere I walked and people were asking well, here are this is the answer to where they say, well, they're all Democrats. No, but they're not all endorsed by the actual Democratic Party. And all of these on this card and all the council candidates are all endorsed by the Democratic Party, not a club, but a party. And they would go, oh, okay. And it has everything you want, everybody you want to vote for, they're all on this card. So that was great. I think a lot of people, when I was doing the last couple of days of the campaign here at Marine Park, which is an interesting place, they try to, I try not to argue, but sometimes the counters were always there trying to start up an argument. And so I let them do their spiel. And at the end of the day, here's the card, contains all of the candidates you need to vote from the Democratic Party in the county of Los Angeles. They go, oh, okay, thank you. And they would take the card. So, I mean, for me, that was the easiest piece, because that was the best campaign piece, I think, that was put out, because it has everybody on there. But anyway, thank you all. And I will continue to get involved and getting ready for the next 2 years. Whoever's going to run, I will be there to support and keep up the good work of this club, because we do great work. So thank you all.
Thanks, Maria. Appreciate you. So we'll hear from John Keane and Jen Smith next meeting. And now let's go to our city council candidates, and we'll start with Natalia.
Hi, y'all. Sorry, I keep looking up. I'm also taking minutes, as John noted. Thank you so much for all of the support, for everyone who went and knocked on doors, who made phone calls, who donated, who texted and emailed friends. I think that the results really show that when we work together, we win. And whatever we just, is discussed later about the analysis of national and other results as compared to local, I'm very tempted to make myself a t-shirt, and maybe t-shirts for the other candidates as well, that say the bright spot, because I keep being told that we're the bright spot of this 2024 election. Maybe it'll be a sun, I don't know. But I'm really looking forward to serving Santa Monica. I'm really looking forward to returning to our progressive values, and I'm really looking forward to just making a difference and working with folks who I know are going to do the work and are going to be committed to working collaboratively and ethically and with integrity. Also, I have I showed it on an OPA meeting, but I'll show you guys because I'm also very excited about it. This is kind of silly, but I have a vintage Robert's Rules of Order book that I will be bringing with me to my first council meeting. All right, thank you. And shout out to my teammates. Without the fabulous slate that we had, I don't think we would have done as well.
Thanks, Natalia. And I know Barry is also speaking tonight at the county committee, so we'll have him come back next time. And now let's go to Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, John. I echo what Natalia said. This really was a team effort. I think we learned from the past that really united and together we win. And I look forward to collaborating with a really amazing group of teammates in the city council to achieve great things. Really, there's so many people on this call. I want to thank. Special shout out to Kay, who made thousands upon thousands of phone calls to folks to get the vote out, and so many other people who volunteered their time to support my campaign and all of our campaigns. To the leadership of this club and others who really put in a lot of hard work to help build those coalitions that were really crucial in our success this year. I think as we move forward, it's really going to be crucial for all of us to not forget the fact that we've got a lot of hard work to do and some difficult years ahead for our city. We face some unprecedented challenges locally, but I know that I and my fellow council members look forward to the challenge, and I am always going to be available to meet with you folks. If you folks want to get my contact info, feel free to reach out to me in the chat. I'll give it to you. One of the great things about Santa Monica is that we're a community. We're a city where you can still get to know people face to face. I look forward to meeting so many great people in this city over the next few years. And thank you again to all of you for your support.
Thanks, Ellis. And now, last but not least, let's go to our top vote getter, Dan Hall.
Hi, good evening, everyone. First, I would just want to echo everything Ellis just said. I want to thank my supporters, my mom, my dad, who both knocked doors and were out there electioneering on election day. Jason, John, of course, you were one of the first people who thought this was a good idea, and I want to thank you, and especially to Gleam, Carolyn, and Jesse for their support from the get-go. Y'all were an amazing group of advisors and teammates. And I absolutely want to thank all of you members of Santa Monica Democratic Club and our coalition members, because like others have said, together we win. And that is keeping our city on a progressive and liberal values track is so important. Sorry if this is a repeat of something John said when I had to step away earlier, but I want to note some neat gains in diversity. This will be the first majority millennial council, majority renter council. Probably not the first of that, but we are returning to a majority renter council. It's an absolute honor to be Santa Monica's first out gay male council member, and I'm proud to be joined by our first out bi council member, Natalia. Our second Black man on council, first in decades, first council member from the Mid-City neighborhood in decades. But I also want to recognize that we lost some diversity as well, in race and gender, and I want to be sensitive to that and know that all of us feel a responsibility to reach out to neighborhoods, demographic groups, just people all over the city, and recognize that we have a responsibility to speak for everyone on council. I think we saw 4 years of a council that was very divisive, very controversial, was straddled with some ethics issues and complaints from staff, and by my perspective, were hostile to progressive values and a growth mindset. And during the campaign, we saw anonymous letters, fear mongering, and these BS yes/no questions in forums. And I want to thank the voters for seeing right through that. I think this was a historic win. It was a repudiation of those kind of tactics and messaging, and that a broad coalition of Democrats, renters, workers, urbanists, represented by this club, SMER, Forward, SEPS, Unite Here, Abundant Housing, Streets for All. When these groups all work together, we are a winning majority, and that is representative of where the city wants to go. So I just want to thank all of you, and looking forward to serving with you and for you over the next 4 years. So thanks for everything.
Thank you. And we have one more speaker from the office of Assemblymember Rick Zabur. Are Robbie or Joshua here?
Yes, Joshua's here.
Hey, Joshua.
Hey, John. Well, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joshua Marinmore. I'm a field representative for Assemblymember Rick Chavez Zabur. My colleague Robbie Steinberg is who you're probably used to seeing as the Santa Monica field rep, but I'm honored to fill in for him tonight and be here in my personal capacity. After a very long election season in so many ways, Assemblymember Zabur is taking a rare week off, and as his staffer, I can personally attest that this is well deserved. And I also know that even while he's on vacation, he would have gladly been here on this call, but it's 4 a.m. where he's at. So I have been asked to convey Assemblymember Zaber's warmest congratulations to all of those who were just elected to represent the people of Santa Monica. And Assemblymember Zaber congratulates the Santa Monica Democratic Club for your continued hard work towards a more progressive Santa Monica. The Assemblymember views this club and all of you here on this call tonight as vital partners, not just during election time, but also during the legislative cycle when we get to work to make life better for folks in Santa Monica and across our state. Assemblymember Zaber, or Rick, as he would insist you call him, is grateful and humbled that the people of Assembly District 51 have again entrusted him to represent them in Sacramento, and he is excited to continue to work with the Santa Monica Democratic Club, as well as all of our newly elected leaders to serve our shared constituencies. So thank you all so much for your time.
Thanks, Joshua, and we'll certainly have the assembly member back soon. Before Jerry, I see your hand up. Before I go to you, did I miss anybody who just got elected that I should mention? I don't know if Adam Schiff is on the call. Maybe I didn't see him. Okay, assuming not. Okay, yeah, Jerry, go ahead real quick. You got to unmute first.
Thanks. I just want to say I think the slate of candidates that were supported by this coalition are some of the best people that I've seen in all the decades I've been coming to the council meetings, and that's with all respect to all the great people I've spoken to and former council members and mayors. It's such a good, dedicated team, and that unity is going to be needed now. We have a lot of work to do, and I hope everyone supports this council when they're appointed on December 10th, even the people that didn't win, or even people that might have had differences. It's time to work on win-win solutions because we have so much to do. I think one of the contributing factors was the good reputation of all the groups in the coalition. Despite over the years, some people trying to bash SMER and other groups, they're a great group and have been doing so much to help protect renters' rights for decades. And I think people understand that. And SEPs and all the groups you mentioned, John, but including the Sierra Club, I think they're important. That was an important endorsement as well, because climate change and the environment is a really crucial issue in Santa Monica.
Definitely.
So I want to thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, well, Craig, you can go ahead, and then we'll get back onto the program.
Yeah, the concern I have going into what we feel is going to be a ominous period, is their plan, and I don't want to more or less preempt what the new council is doing, but I'm curious as to what, if any, kind of outreach and or commission that the community will have, either in the form of commission to where we can back and forth as to various concerns that we see in and around the city. As policymakers, I know that becomes a key issue. And, I say that speaking from the point of view that we've already been in Santa Monica, we've been hit with that right fascist wing agenda, disrupting meetings. So that presence I know is here. So I'm trying to get a sense now of specifically just what is available to us in the way of resources that, we can sit face to face with those folks who are, just put in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate your question. I think it's a good way to frame what we're about to do. And so if anybody wants to respond to the question directly right now in the comments, that might be a good way to do that. Otherwise, let's see, because I think, all the candidates are here. We're going to be talking about the election outcomes. We're about to talk about the national election too. So I think that will come up as we discuss it. And if not, we'll circle back to it at the end. But I appreciate hearing from our local winners at the top. Now we're going to zoom way out to the national picture for a while, and we're going to slowly make our way back to California and LA, and then eventually back here to what happened in Santa Monica. And we have a great panel to discuss all the different levels of election results here with us. Our very own Santa Monica council member, Carolyn Torosis, who may be part of the leadership team on the incoming council. We'll see about that. Host of the What's Next Los Angeles podcast, and of course, former Los Angeles City Council member Mike Bonin, and the chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, Mark Ramos. And also, just to be clear, I told them already earlier today, but any of the candidates who we just heard from who won this evening or who won this election, if you want to weigh in and join the conversation at any point, just raise your hand and we'd love to hear your thoughts on these questions too. But Mark Ramos, I want to start with you. So you're our Democratic leader. We look to you for guidance in good times and bad. And I know that all of us here wish we were gathered to hear you talk about a huge Democratic victory, landslide, like your predecessor, Mark Gonzalez, got to do 4 years ago. But instead, we're facing a second Trump term and a popular vote rejection of Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party platform. So let's start with you, and then we'll ask the others. But what happened here? Where did we go wrong that 4 years ago, after voting him out of office decisively, now the majority of the popular vote went to Donald Trump?
Well, first off, John, thank you. And thank you all for the invitation tonight. Congratulations to all the winners in the city of Santa Monica. We look forward to working with you in Santa Monica, and I know you're all looking forward to continuing to move Santa Monica forward in a very progressive way. So the real work begins for all of you, right? Once you win. But look, John, I think there's going to be a lot of kind of Monday morning quarterbacking over what happened in this election. To me, look, we missed, right? We missed on the messaging. I think it was really, really hard personally. When I the news outlet, I'll watch Fox, I watch OAN, but mainly the news outlet is MSNBC or CNN. But even when Trump says something outrageous on any show, when they spend the first half hour talking about what outrageous thing he did today, all of the free media that he was able to earn, basically campaigning for 9 years, Kamala Harris putting together an outstanding campaign in a very, very short period of time. I don't really buy into what folks say, like folks didn't get to know her. I think the economic question is real. People are hurting. I think the other big piece is when we look at what happened in states like Arizona and Nevada, where we split a ticket, right? Or you looked at some states where they enshrined abortion rights through the ballot, but still elected Donald Trump in some of those states. So I think people were kind of in a mood of, I'm going to kind of cover myself home and take a chance on the national issues with this guy. I truly believe, like a lot of you do, that there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse, maybe sooner rather than later, especially when we see that, Trump trying to appoint Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. And then he resigned his position today in Congress 2 days before the Ethics Committee was supposed to vote on the investigation they had done on him. So now the investigation they can't vote, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of those things. But I think the real question for me is that I've been pondering is, it's not about why Kamala lost. I think the real question for us as Democrats as a country, we have to ask, why did Donald Trump win? Right? I think that's the much deeper question, that people are hurting, people were willing to take a chance, and people are angry, right? It's very much where I think when Kamala Harris is talking about, I'm going to go after price gougers, I'm not really sure that resonated, but I'm going to put a tariff on China because they're screwing us. Makes sense to people in a very visceral way, right? Regardless of whatever the tariff means, they just know that it sounds angry like me. And when people feel like they have been left behind in this economy, and this is not a recent issue. Working people have been left behind in this country for decades. My day job is I am president of United Food and Commercial Workers Local 1428. I represent folks who work in the grocery stores. I bought a home I'm actually on the far end of the other of LA County. I live in Laverne, California. I bought a home working in the grocery stores. That's not a reality for my members today. So working people are slipping further and further behind in this economy. The gap continues to grow, and I think working people were willing to take a chance on someone like Donald Trump, who we all know. I know a lot of us here feel that we know Donald Trump is not going to take care of these folks. But what I've been encouraging folks to do is, I think in a short period of time, we as I would start with this. I don't think it's healthy for us to build our coalition or expand our base as Democrats if we start calling people names, right? If we begin to demonize people or call names of people who voted for Donald Trump or alienate them, because I think a lot of them are going to need a home rather soon, probably within the next year or so. A lot of them are going to feel their buyer's remorse and want to come back to somewhere. And I think us as Democrats have to be there, willing to welcome these folks back into the fold. We have to have some hard conversations with them over some of the behavior, right? Because I think that Donald Trump has really made it okay for people to say whatever they want to say. And I don't think that's okay, right? I can tell you, as the father of a trans daughter, an adult trans daughter, I'm terrified, right? I'm terrified. It is any parent or someone who's had a brother or a sister or a friend who has come out and found their happiness in their true self, knowing that they struggled to get to that point, and now to see my daughter afraid, angers me, but really focuses me on this fight. Look, I've lost before. I've lost elections. I've lost organizing campaigns. I've lost plenty of losing in my life. But, I always try to go back to what my mother would always tell me. My mother was an orphan at 11 years old, raised 8 kids, a lot of times on her own. And mom always told us that, look, when something bad happens, it's up to you to figure out what to do next. If you dwell and you wallow in that defeat or that disappointment, then that issue is going to own you for a long time. So it is up to us to make sure that we do not let this experience own us. It's okay to feel what we're feeling, but we have to get back. We have to get in this fight. We have to reorganize. We have to grow our base. Then we have to figure out the messaging that we missed, right? Because this is a serious, serious thing that we're talking about here. And I truly, truly believe that we have an opportunity, because from every crisis is an opportunity, right? It's one of those things you just have to live by. We have a real opportunity here to talk to people, and I think we need to talk to people in a very honest way, without alienating them or demonizing them, because calling people names, in my opinion, is just short-sighted. Look, we're all kind of probably staying off social media because of all of the boasting and just horrible things that are being said. That when people felt emboldened a couple of days after the election, the day after the election, sending texts to African-American students saying you've been selected to be a slave, your body, my choice rhetoric, that is horrible stuff, right? And I think there will be a comeuppance with a lot of that stuff. And I'm not saying that we engage those people, but I personally, 35% of my members are registered Republicans. My staff was at the local union was devastated, as was the staff at LACDP and a lot of our members. But I had to remind folks at my local union that we have members who are celebrating today. We need to figure out why they're celebrating, right? My union is in for tough negotiations next year with our major grocery companies. And our employers are going to feel emboldened by this new administration. I have to be able to talk to my members to get them to understand this. Look, but I want to highlight, if you don't mind, some of the work in LA County, because it's in LA County, we are on track right now to probably have about 75% of our endorsed candidates win. We, with the flip of the George Whitesides race, Derek Tran, as of just a few hours, is about 350 votes behind in his race. Right. So those are the 2 last remaining congressional seats in LA that were represented by Republicans. But I want to first off, I want to thank Susan Shu, our recording secretary, who was on this call, and Annie Rayland, our director of operations at LACDP, for the outstanding and just committed work that they do every day. Look, I want to tell you that We have at LACDP during this cycle, we sent out over 408,000 emails, 175,000 text messages. We had over 3.7 million digital impressions on social media, 410,000 pieces of mail. Our chartered organizations, our clubs and our headquarters, over 29 million text messages sent, over 11 million phone calls made, over 162,000 doors knocked, 98,000 emails sent. 2,000 people were sent from LA County into Nevada and Arizona and other parts of the country. 560,000 postcards and 17,000 lawn signs were delivered. We did our part. We did our part. We always do more. We can always do more. But I think that folks, I just cannot enough talk about the idea that I think we have a moment, and I think we have to do a lot of deep reflection and kind of figure out why Donald Trump won. And I think we get there. Look, as I said, I've lost before, but I'm ready for this fight. I had my moment of clarity on Sunday evening, and I realized that I'm not running from this. I'm ready for this fight, and I want all of us to be in this fight. Because as Vice President Kamala Harris said, right, sometimes the fight takes a little longer. But those of us who've been fighting for good things for a very long time know that even when we win, the fight doesn't stop. Because those who want to oppress us or take things from us never stop scheming. The fight will always continue, even when we win. But for right now, I've had my moment of clarity, and I am ready to fight. And I'm asking all of us to figure out how to do this together. It's okay, we're Democrats, we don't always agree. But in this moment, we can agree that this is not a good thing that just happened. So let's rally around that. Let's grow our ranks. Let's solidify. And let's do every dang thing we can do, block by door, block by block, street by street, city by city, throughout LA County, which represents over 10 million people in LA County, 88 cities, 3.1 million Democrats. A lot of work. And I spent a lot of time this election cycle traversing the county from one end to the other, visiting as many people as I could. And I am committed to do this work. And I ask all of us to, let's do this thing together. Okay to feel bad today, but let's get back to work.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. And of course, we'll definitely be coming back to all of the stuff that happened here in LA County in just a bit. But I want to bring in Mike and Carolyn to weigh in here too on this big question of what do you think happened that led us to this presidential outcome? So Mike, Carolyn, whoever wants to jump in.
Carolyn, you want to go?
Sure, Mike. Thanks. Hi, everyone. And I'm certainly not as eloquent as Mark. And I love every single time that Mark talks, I'm inspired. And thank you for your leadership. And thank you to all of the folks in our at our LA County Democratic Party for all the work that you put in. So just really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so proud to live in this county. I'm proud to serve Santa Monica. But I think that quite frankly, we live a little bit in a bubble here. I hate to say that. And I think that what you saw was that my interpretation is that the economic concerns for folks were kind of top of mind. The post-pandemic inflation, I think, was really ginned up a little bit with the Trump campaign, economic instability for folks. And I think that the message was sent that our Democratic candidates just didn't have an effective message in other parts of the country to address rising cost of livings. And I think that, it showed that our focus on these progressive social justice issues are really important, but that's not helping us reach these working class voters in purple areas in the country. And so how do we change our messaging? I think that you're going to continue to see these postmortems, but we know that there was a decline in support among non-white and working class voters for the Democratic Party in many states, in many races. And I think you also saw Republican gains in some of these more traditionally Democratic urban areas like in New York, and we'll see what happens in California. But I think we also, like Mark said, did not necessarily benefit as much from this short campaign that Vice President Harris had to campaign, and Trump had been out there, for years at that point. So I mean, although You know, I think she was a great, I mean, I was at the convention. I think many of you were there. I was so inspired. I honestly didn't think that this could happen, but we have to do a better job as a party at catching some of these moderate voters and really showing that the message of uplifting everyone is something that we hold, you know, front and center, and that we are committed to, and we are reaching out to people who might, you know, identify the Democratic Party as that of these liberal urban elites. So I think it's really important that we do some self-reflection. And then I would just say I have some other thoughts about how we can strengthen our position here in the county and as a state, but we're going to be seeing some really tough calls on reduction of federal funding. And we're even hearing that some of the money that was allocated under the Biden administration with the bipartisan infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS and Science, our federal lobbyists are already telling us that there's talk that the Trump administration is going to claw back not just money that's been encumbered, but money that like literally has already been encumbered and it hasn't been spent. So like anything that we haven't put out the door, which is, you know, something I'm deeply concerned about. I'll stop there because I want to let Mike talk, but that's my assessment. I'm not an expert, but that's what I'm seeing.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks for everybody for being here. Special shout out. I thought I saw Phyllis Dudick on the call. I just want to give her a special shout out and some love. She was one of my most hardcore volunteers in 2013, and lots of love for her.
We didn't know that. That's so cool.
So, you know, everybody's soul searching right now. The other night I was watching AOC do an Instagram Live. There's a hell of a lot of people in the Bronx and in Queens who voted for her and voted for Donald Trump. And she asked those voters, why, how? Please explain to me. And the answers she got were very instructive. You're both outsiders. You're not part of the establishment. You both push boundaries. You both care about the working class. You're both very real. To me, that's very instructive, because one of the things that Trump does very well is he identifies a cause of a problem, right? For him, it's generally immigrants or elites. We identified primarily in this election that the problem was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, saying the problem is Donald Trump doesn't really address people's problems. What AOC does, and what I think Bernie did so effectively 4 and 8 years ago, was talk about the problem being the establishment and the system, big banks, big pharma, the gun lobby, the NRA. Like there's systemic bad actors who get a pass from the Democratic Party too often. We sound as if we're tinkering with the establishment, and Trump, Bernie, AOC sound like they're trying to blow the whole damn thing up and rebuild it as something better. And I think we need to be very mindful of that and understand who the real villain in our society, in our economy is. And I hope we get back to that sort of full-throated, vigorous defense of people who are working by pointing out who's really causing their problems. It throughout history, the elites in the South convinced poor whites that their enemies were slaves or freedmen, right? Not the elites who were exploiting everybody. That same dynamic happens now where Trump successfully paints immigrants as the scapegoat. I hope we can get back to that. And I'm a little bit worried about some of the direction I've seen in the commentary since the election. I've seen so many people trying to pin the blame on a certain demographic, whether it's Latino men or whether it's women didn't vote the right way. Everybody's trying to find a scapegoat, and I think we should be mindful that we just ran against someone whose main theme is scapegoating people, and we need to not do that. The other thing I just want to call out is I've seen a few people today writing about how Democrats need to abandon identity politics, as if that and wokeness is the problem of the party. And I think that criticism illustrates part of the problem we're facing. It's an example of the other side really owning the narrative, owning the frame of reference, owning the terminology, so that our caring about civil rights or reproductive freedom or gay rights or standing up for trans people is identity politics. When Trump and the MAGA movement, their whole thing is identity politics. It's about aggrieved white men, and they exalt that. And I think that Americans agree with us. People want Medicare for all. People want stricter gun control. People want free college. We just got to talk about it the right way.
Can I just add something else? I also think like we have to look at turnout. No one's really mentioned that, but how are we getting the people that need that identify and are going to benefit from, Democrats uplifting the working class to the polls? Because I think that we saw that there was a reduction in voter turnout, both in Santa Monica and across the country.
Yeah, it's let's see what Natalia has to say.
As y'all were talking, I just know I kind of I heard some themes that of what happened at the national level also happening locally. Part of it being the amount of time that the candidates spent campaigning. Our candidates who were successful in this race started early. I think the earliest was Dan starting in like January, I want to say, versus, the other candidates who started in like June, July, or later. We saw that with Kamala, with Vice President Harris, and with President-elect Donald Trump. He had been campaigning, as Carolyn noted, for 9 years. And Vice President Harris had to turn like on a dime and go from supporting another candidate to becoming the candidate herself. And, I don't think anybody on this call would disagree with me that she ran an excellent campaign, but it's really difficult to do it in that amount of time. And on the split ticket votes, I think that's also something that's reflected locally, where we had a lot of people vote for our slate of 4, as Mike mentioned earlier today, and also vote for Prop 36 and vote for Nathan Hochman. So I think there's a lot of soul searching and exploration and analysis still to do, especially since not all of the votes are counted yet, but most of them are in. So that was just kind of my my thoughts listening to y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get back to this issue at the local level and see how that interacts with what's happening at the national. But I also wanted to just touch on stuff that Carolyn and Mike were just saying, which is, Bernie Sanders put out the statement last week that said it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to point out, because I remember 20 years ago when I was in college and studying political science, and the professors were very clear to say the Republicans are the party of the elite and the college educated, and the Democrats are for the working class. And now we look at the crosstabs and you can see that has completely reversed. And now the Democratic Party is more attractive to the educated and college educated elite. And Trump has figured out a cheat code to get into the hearts and minds of the working class. So Do you agree with Senator Sanders that Democrats have abandoned the working class? Does anybody want to talk about that?
Well, like, as someone who represents low-wage workers, I think that what Donald Trump is communicating to people, look, when he says, "I will be your retribution," right? That's a big net that he's throwing. Like, I will be the point of your spear for any grievance you have. Is literally what he's telling people. My members are hurting, right? And it is harder and harder for my members to get ahead. But what we have seen is the downward pressure on our contracts coming from large business, private equity, consolidation of grocery stores, right? When I started in the grocery stores, working in the grocery stores, that 37 years ago, there were probably 9, 10, 11 union grocery stores. Now we're down to 3 grocery companies. When we went on strike in 2003, 75% of all grocery stores in Southern California were unionized. That number is down now to about 38%. So that makes it harder for us to negotiate good contracts, right? So when we see the Democratic Party, or my members see the Democratic Party aligning themselves with Wall Street and investment banks, and Donald Trump airs his grievance against all of them while taking their money, of course. Or Donald Trump says, well, I wrote checks to Hillary and so, because that's how you play the game, right? He has manipulated the process, but also speaks in a way that resonates with people, right? I got screwed. They're screwing you. You can't trust the government. Look, John, you talked about that question that you talked about. That was a question I used to ask my father when I was a child, right? What's the difference, Dad? I've been working and doing this stuff with my family and having these conversations. So I was like 7 years old. And Dad gave the same answer, right? And I can tell you, if my father was alive today, he might be a Trump supporter, right? It is that kind of stuff that has happened over time, and people feel disconnected. And I'm not sure that they actually feel disconnected. Not sure they feel connected to Trump. Some of them do, but I think what they're looking for is a chance. And he is telling them, I will be your chance. Trust me. In reality, in his 4 years, all he did was, let 1 million people die of COVID, and give a tax break to billionaires.
I'm a big Bernie fan, and I'm part of that wing of the party. And I think Bernie's really onto something. I don't know that I would say the party as a whole has abandoned the working class, but large segments of it have. And I think that as we look back at the last couple Democratic presidents, I think the one who did the most for the working class was Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden did some really amazing things that nobody talks about, nobody gives him credit for. But the previous Democratic presidents, Bill Clinton turbocharged mass incarceration, right, and moved the party into a more friendly to corporate mentality. Barack Obama, when he took office, he let all the people who were responsible for the economic collapse and everybody losing their homes and the mortgage collapse, he let them all off the hook. We didn't address that. And that just made people feel, I think, like this is just the establishment. This is the system. And I think if we look at what's happening locally, right, in the city of Los Angeles, it used to be incumbents didn't lose elections. Now in Los Angeles, incumbents are getting kicked out by these outsiders who are not part of the establishment. And I think that we so project that the Democratic Party is part of the establishment and get so cozy with titans of industry, and our party largely gets funded by a lot of big industries, and I think that makes a lot of Democratic elected officials and politicians hesitant to take on those industries. So if they haven't abandoned the working class, they're certainly sort of pulling the wool over their eyes a lot, I think.
That's so, I mean, it's so interesting because I was just reading the other day how if you look at the last 20 years, meaning basically 2005 to today, there's only been one presidential election where the incumbent party got reelected. That's 2012. And every other presidential election has been a very drastic change from the incumbent president to who got elected afterwards. And we may be living in very tumultuous times that caused that.
I think Mike has a great point, to be honest with you, John. I think about Bill Clinton. I think
Mhm.
when Bill Clinton beat George Bush, we were in a recession, and George Bush was being punished for raising taxes after making his no new taxes commitment, right? But then Bill Clinton left George Bush II a thriving economy, a budget surplus, and he crashed it, right? And then we got Barack Obama, who came in during the Great Recession, saved the economy, left Trump a thriving economy, and Trump crashed it, right? And we're looking at a very similar scenario, that with these policies that Trump is looking to enact, it may very well crash the economy by next summer, right? And I think that Democrats, for whatever reason, I had a commentator a week or so before the election, that the Republican commentator was saying, people are hurting. And then the Democratic commentator said, what do you mean? Wall Street's thriving. People's 401ks are through the roof. And the Republican commentator said, not for working people.
Carolyn, were you about to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you saw that the wealth gap continued to grow during COVID. I think you even saw it with California's economy. The richest people in our state became richer, and our budget did well, and the poorest folks were continually marginalized and did not do well. And so I turn back to my point that I think I made earlier, which is I definitely think that there is a perception problem that the party is disconnected from working class Americans. Now, do I think that that's the reality? Absolutely not. Just to what Mike was saying earlier, I think all of us know that the 4 candidates that were endorsed by the Democratic Club in our election were called the establishment slate, like the more conservative, less socially liberal, I would say, candidates that ran against our slate, who said, look, it's really unsafe here and we need more police. I mean, they were seen as the outsiders who were trying to speak for the everyday working Santa Monica. And so like a smaller microcosm of what was happening at the national level. I think that we need to do a better job at connecting with these voters, but Biden, let's be clear, Biden was the most labor-friendly, worker-friendly president I will contend in American history, more labor-friendly than Barack Obama, to be sure. We have always been the party of the working people, and we will continue to stand for that. It's just, how are we connecting with those folks? We need to do a better job. For whatever reason, our message didn't resonate, and maybe it's because Kamala didn't distance herself enough from Biden. But again, I think Biden did an incredible job with the economy that he inherited at righting the ship. So we have to be that big tent, and I think we can't just expect, as my work bosses would say, we cannot expect Black women to come in and save us. We can't expect Latinos to come in and save this. We can't blame this on one group. We have to look at ourselves and look at our messaging.
Yeah, I would just two things I would say is, look, Donald Trump is going to get credit for the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS Act. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to go to work, right? We're going to reestablish this economy in very different ways here in America, and put Americans back to work in American jobs. And I think that's important. I mean, if Donald Trump doesn't screw it up, he's going to get credit for that. Look, just today he said that he'd love to serve a third term. Right. Those are real things that we're going to have to contend with. And I just think that I just, for whatever reason, we're just in different times, and I'm really happy that we are having these meetings to talk to each other.
Thanks. Let's hear from Anastasia.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Carolyn said something earlier about people feeling disconnected, whether they should or not. And the truth is that throughout the country, a lot of these folks have disconnected themselves, whether they realize it or not. And what I mean is, you've got folks who are victims of our own success in this country since post World War II. People inherited homes that were paid off from their grandparents, their parents in some cases, and had wonderful public educations that were fully funded by traditional governments and congresses of decades past. And now they are enjoying the easy access to credit and you know, a bass boat in every driveway was the mantra in Missouri the last 10 or 15 years. It's true. And whether people could afford it or not, they're the predatory practices of the big banks and lending institutions that Mike Bonham was talking about earlier, you know, have spoiled people and put people into bad lives and bad, poor decisions of their own making. And then they turn around and vote for Republicans in their state legislatures, in their school boards, local assembly, you know, state assemblies, governors, and then they wonder why their lives are so crappy. And so a combination of personal choices and of living in a red state or a supermajority red state, even if they are Democrats and they are union members. You know, Andrew just said you've got UAW workers in Michigan voting for Trump. I mean, it's just it boggles the mind, but I think we've just got a confluence of factors coming together, some of which we can work on, and some of which, you know, folks are going to have to recognize what they need to do in their own communities, local, county, state, and in their own households to make their lives better and recognize the work of good people around them.
Thanks, Anastasia. So if other folks have questions, you can put them in the chat, or maybe we'll have time to come to it at the end. We're trying to limit to our panelists and our recently elected folks right now. So I wanted to ask or talk about, as the transition to the second Trump administration gears up, we're hearing about some of the proposed cabinet appointments. So this is probably the worst part of the meeting, what I'm next 15 seconds. But here are some of the picks that we've heard about so far. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, EPA Chief Lee Zeldin, UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik, Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, Defense Secretary is Fox News host Pete Hegseth, Director of National Intelligence just came out today, Tulsi Gabbard, former guest of this club. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, which is totally made up and not a real department, but is being tasked with slashing government spending and regulations. And finally, earlier today, the capper of this, Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. So that's a pretty disturbing list. Not much to like there. Does anyone have thoughts about, just in general, with those names in mind, where this administration may be headed and what role we have in the opposition to stop their worst instincts?
I mean, I'm deeply disturbed. I think, you know, we're putting foreign policy into the hands of someone who doesn't, so Marco Rubio, who doesn't seem to know anything about US diplomacy. I'm pretty concerned for Ukraine, very concerned about what this administration is going to do to side with Russia. I don't even know that I want to open the Israel-Hamas discussion. And then I think, you know, Secretary of Defense, you saw the Republicans make fun of Tim Walz for being in the Army National Guard while you've just you've appointed the Secretary of Defense, a Fox News host and an Army National Guard veteran. I don't know that he has any defense experience. That's deeply concerning. I mean, we could go on, but the Matt Gaetz one, I mean, as an attorney, as someone who cares deeply about our rule of law, is is probably the most alarming, like you mentioned. I don't actually know that he can get confirmed. Let's hope he can't. But having that person in charge of our legal system is pretty frightening. And I just think we see what the trend is here. It's loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. That is all that President Trump cares about, period, not whether someone actually is good on the merits. And I was thinking to myself, like, this is the least diverse set of folks that we've seen recently. So yeah, I'm happy to hear what other folks have to say about this.
I'm deeply concerned with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. When the comments of, I think one of them made of trimming $2 trillion from the federal budget. I think discretionary spending in the budget is 1.6 trillion. I just, I hate to be, so we're talking about trying to build a big tent here, but all of these congressional members who are calling for this reduction in the federal government, I would love for most of them to submit a list of all the federal dollars that are spent in their congressional districts and offer up what they should trim from their district first, right? Because we know as Californians, we pay more in taxes than we receive from the federal government. But I think all of these choices are disturbing. The gentleman who for the Secretary of Defense, knowing that he's got a tattoo reminiscent of the medieval Crusaders, on his chest. Mike Huckabee saying that, Palestinians aren't real, that they're just terrorists, right? I think these are real deep questions. And in the hearing today that Trump may actually invoke some section of some rule to actually recess Congress and make recess appointments of his cabinet so they don't have to go through confirmation hearings, which is just a complete takeover of the federal process. And that's what I think. I think at first some of his supporters will be like, yeah, this is my guy taking control. But I think the results of it are going to be pretty scary. And I think that's where we have to be ready to build a larger coalition.
It's a pretty bad nightmare when J.D. Vance may be the best personnel decision that he's made.
Ugh, don't say that. But
Let
you're
that
probably
sink
right.
in.
Okay, so let's do what we like to do here and turn our attention toward California. So thinking about looking ahead, Governor Newsom called an emergency session of the legislature to take preventative actions to protect Californians from the incoming administration. Does anyone know what kind of actions are being taken? What kind of legislation is going to be passed in the next few weeks? Has anyone heard about that?
I haven't heard anything.
Oh, go ahead, Mark. Probably.
No, go ahead. No, I
haven't
heard anything. I have a comment on something else that recently happened at the state level.
I think, look, I'll just say, I think most of you know, I'm not here in my professional capacity, but most of you know that I'm a senior deputy to Supervisor Mitchell, who's on the LA County Board of Supervisors. We have our lobbyists in Sacramento that are very closely attuned to all of this. And what I will say is that we're dusting off our playbook from 2016 of all of the legislation that was passed and also the legal challenges that we mounted. I would assume that that's probably what's going to be happening at the state level. We haven't heard anything that Governor Newsom plans to introduce, but I think everyone saw that he was in DC trying to shore up funding for California before the change in administration, particularly on FEMA, disaster assistance, wildfires, et cetera. We know that that's a huge issue here and people have just lost their homes. But I think I've been hearing that most of the focus is in the short term is going to be around immigration. So that's what we've been focusing on, and we're going to be talking about at the county as well. Like, how do we make sure that we're a safe place in LA County for our immigrant community?
I agree, Carolyn. I think our immigrant community is. I don't know, whether this is going to be a reliving of Prop 187 and we're going to have to kind of refocus and take care of people. But I can tell you what my members, and I've heard from members in this last week, are upset about that the state just did, is what CARB just did. The idea, whether it's, incremental or whatever, but my members who drive to work, coming to me and saying the Democrats are going to raise my gas prices by 65 cents a gallon. My members, they nothing could be more tone deaf than that happening. Although we know it has to happen, we know that we need to move towards EVs. But my members are driving older vehicles, and there's no incentive for them to purchase an EV. Gas prices going up 65 cents a gallon, it will be detrimental to my members and most working people. And people are upset about it. People are upset about it, and it's one more example to them to say, see, Democrats just aren't listening.
In the Trump-Harris debate, Trump kept repeating on the question of reproductive freedom that the choice over women's bodies should be made by state governments, that state governments should have control over such an issue. Curiously, they do not feel the same way about gun laws or environmental laws or immigration laws or anything else. We're certainly going to see the Battle of California, but I also think in very particular, we're going to see the Battle of Los Angeles. I think Trump is going to use the Olympics as a hostage with Mayor Bass and with the LA City Council. And he's going to use the immigration issue and the coming vote in the city council in Los Angeles, where they almost certainly will declare Los Angeles a sanctuary city. He's going to use that. And, are they going to pull funding for security or reimbursing LA for costs? And it's going to put LA officials, because the city is already hurting financially, it's going to put them in a very difficult decision where I think people are going to have to be forced to choose between their values and the purse. And it's going to be a big fight right here in LA.
Okay, so let's look at some of these specific results in California. So first of all, Kamala Harris won 59% of the vote here, which is actually down from 63% in 2020. So she actually, even though it's her home state, performed more poorly than President Biden did. But we passed a couple of good ballot measures, freedom to marry, which repealed the old Prop 8 gay marriage ban. However, we also lost a few key progressive measures. So, Mike, on the LA podcast the other day, I heard this week's episode, and you touched on the surprising loss of Prop 6, which would have ended slave labor in prison. And you were grouping that with the overwhelming loss on Prop 36, which passed with the widest margin of any measure, as well as the loss of our own DA, George Gascon. So what is going on in California that explains these losses, the sort of criminal justice reform backlash in some way?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a huge backlash on public safety and criminal justice issues, and as you said, it was Gascon, it was Prop 36, it was Prop 6. It was not universal, however. I mean, LA County elected 2 public defenders as judges. Voters in Kevin De Leon's district voted overwhelmingly for a candidate who a week before was recorded saying "F the police," right? So it's certainly not universal. But I think a large part of the cause is that we have absolutely lost the narrative war when it comes to public safety. We have allowed the question to be crime is skyrocketing. Do we need more cops, and do we need to put more people in jail? Instead of what is the best way to keep our neighborhoods, our families, our communities safe? Those lead to 2 different answers, fundamentally different answers. When I was in office, I surveyed people on a series of issues. Who do you think should respond to a mental health call? Who do you think should respond to a domestic violence call? Who do you think should handle traffic enforcement? 30, 40 different issues. The only ones people said we need more cops for were violent crimes or like a burglary in progress. And we have allowed the right wing, from Fox on the national level to social media groups, West Side Current and others, to write a narrative that crime is up, even in areas where it's not. Crime and homelessness and drugs and progressives are all one thing. And as we study the best way to communicate on public safety, that we're the ones who are trying to keep neighborhoods safe by preventing crime, investing in things that make crime not happen. I actually think one of the places we need to use as a case study is Santa Monica, and how Dan and Ellis and Barry and Natalia all beat back the incumbents, Phil Brock and Oscar Del Torre, who that was their message, right? They were like a Prop 36 team, essentially, an anti-Gascon team. And I want to know what you all did in Santa Monica, because you did it right.
Well, I honestly think, Mike, something has to be said for organizing, because the coalition of folks had much better, and we'll get to that, I think, ground game in an authentic way. That nothing beats volunteers, period. You can pay for canvassers all you want, but nothing beats volunteers. But in terms of what we saw in California, back to this tough on crime narrative, I mean, let's be clear, voters in Santa Monica still voted in favor against Prop 36 and Prop 6 by a majority, I believe. John might correct me, but I think that's what we found out when we were looking. And we know that they voted for a majority for Nathan Hochman, but still voted for our 4 candidates. So I think that we have a perception problem and a narrative problem. And let's talk about like a coalition building problem. We, as someone who gets lobbied by different coalitions of folks, every day in my day job, we have to be an allyship with our justice advocates. Maybe everyone's issue isn't the justice issue, but we have to realize that to elect progressive leaders, it's one thing to elect them, it's another thing to support them while they govern. And Gascon got elected, and he had a really progressive set of policies that he enacted, but who was there to kind of back him up and support him throughout his 4 years in governing? I think we know at the county, we talk about this at work a lot, that the justice advocates sometimes have difficulty organizing, and they only organize for justice issues. And so I think the thing is like, when we're talking about this big tent in Santa Monica, yeah, maybe Streets for All is caring about safe streets, and Unite Here is caring about workers, and SMER is caring about tenants. But at the end of the day, we all have united policy goals. And so we're going to support each other on our different issues, even though different organizations are going to be taking the lead. And so having that coalition of inside out, so outsiders who are pushing the inside and are working for the long game, not just for the single issue, and are standing in partnership and allyship and coalition with each other, I think absolutely makes a difference. And we haven't mastered that skill yet. I shouldn't use that word. We haven't really fully wrapped our arms around that skill, I think, just in coalition building here in LA County.
And I think it's important that we also look at the effect of social media on these ballot measures, right? The network news. Look, there's a reason when there's a car chase, everyone goes to the car chase on the news channels, right? People love the drama, right? In San Francisco, Target and Walgreens closed stores and blamed it on retail theft, and then later had to admit that it wasn't retail theft; it was a business decision, right? But no one ever reads the retraction in the newspaper after the story happens, right? That's what's pushed out there. Elon Musk buying Twitter, right? The misinformation, right? The algorithm of these videos of retail theft rings happening in stores. And understand, my members are in the middle of that. My members are assaulted when these things happen, but no one is looking at, while these folks are stealing these items, they are moving it on to somebody else. They are moving it onto online retailers. Why aren't we holding Mark Zuckerberg and Meta accountable for selling stolen items on their platforms, right? Why aren't we going to Amazon and saying these things have to happen here? Because if we stop the seller of the product, then we can probably stop the theft in the store, right? It's very much like with cannabis, that we're inundated by illegal dispensaries, but you can literally go on Yelp and find Yelp reviews for illegal cannabis dispensaries, and these things are allowed to exist. So to me, the reason that Prop 36 was a challenge, for one, George Gascon's the crime rate in LA County. And I know George. I really like George. The crime is the same or if less than Orange County. The issues of crime are the same all up and down the state. And George really challenged us to be who we say we are. Right? How many times have we heard people run for district attorney and these things and talk about criminal justice reform? But George was beginning to show us what it really was. And for a lot of us, it scared the hell out of us, right? Because of what we saw on Twitter, or the victims' rights advocates who began to highlight one victim, but didn't talk about how many people were actually helped by criminal justice reform policies that George enacted. If it bleeds, it leads. Right? That is, whether it's social media or news, I don't think we can ever discount what happened with social media and the mainstream media and the media in this election, whether it's at the national or the local level. I think it's poisonous. And I know that most of you on here are very high information voters, or all of you are, and you do your research. Even if you're on somewhere and you're going to share something, you probably, well, it doesn't sound quite right. Right? Did Abraham Lincoln really post something on the internet? Right? But people will share these things constantly, right? Because there's a lack of actual research happening on these things, and these things begin to take on a life of their own, and they become very opinion-forming issues for people, and then they become solidified, and that is why we see some of the results that we saw on Election Day.
We should also note, too, that the way the media, the way politics generally, and even the way we allow crime to be defined is very, very narrow, right? Crime as covered by the media, as defined by Nathan Hochman, is a burglary, is a murder, is shoplifting. You don't hear mention of environmental crimes. You don't hear mention of wage theft, which is exponentially more there is exponentially more money stolen by companies from their employees than there are by shoplifters. We don't hear much about hate crimes. We don't hear much from Nathan Hochman about illegal guns. All of those things are crime. All of those things are things George Gascon was actually addressing. And the frame got so narrowed that we have a very precarious situation now where there's no mandate for Hochman to actually care about that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about positive things for a little bit. So Mike, you wrote a blog post last week looking for the silver linings in LA County. You mentioned some of them already, but why don't you run through some of the local bright spots? So obviously we'll be getting to Santa Monica in great detail in a moment, but a lot of Santa Monicans might not know about some of these other races that happen. So what are the other ones that you've noticed?
There are lots of silver linings in Los Angeles County. I mean, I think the biggest one has got to be that voters overwhelmingly approved Measure A, which continues and expands funding for homelessness programs countywide. If that had failed and Measure H had expired, as it would have, people who are families that are currently in temporary housing would have been thrown out on the street. It would have been absolutely disastrous. And this was a huge win by a great coalition of people. It was thoughtfully written, and it allows us to continue making progress and build on the small progress that has been made. Another one I mentioned was we've got two public defenders who were elected to the Superior Court bench, building on one who was elected in the last cycle. The Defenders of Justice and the organization La Defensa and LA Forward have been doing great jobs recruiting candidates. And that's a big change. It's a big difference in perspective to have on the bench. In the city of LA, this one, for obvious reasons, is very near and dear to my heart. Kevin De Leon was soundly defeated by tenant rights attorney Isabel Jurado, which really makes a very solid and strong progressive bloc on the city council to push on sanctuary city stuff, renter protections, unarmed crisis response stuff, solutions to homelessness. Santa Monica is like a beacon of hope to so many of us. You have like this incredible progressive supermajority. In Culver City, they took back the majority with the election of Bubba Fish and the re-election of Yasmin Imani McMorrin. In West Hollywood, the progressive candidates have won. John Erickson was re-elected along with Danny Hang. In South Pasadena, a couple progressives won. In like almost all of the Sela cities, Southeast Los Angeles, Cudahy, Montebello, Linwood, all of them elected progressives. And some of the most exciting young progressives are Latinas coming out of some of these Sela cities. And they're going to be leaders that we're going to be seeing a lot more of. They're going to be the next generation of folks in the state legislature. And then also in Burbank, Constantine Anthony, who's one of the most progressive elected officials at the local government level, unapologetically in Burbank, won a commanding re-election. Also, Carla Griego for the LA School Board. That was a big victory for UTLA and others. And then in the state legislature, we've gotten some incredible new, real strong progressives who got elected. Sasha Renee Perez is a new assemblywoman, Shadi El-Hawari, Nick Schultz, all of those big progressive victories. And then some swing seats like Piara Chavo got reelected by a big margin compared to the 200 votes from last time. So we have a lot of signs for hope and a lot of silver linings in Los Angeles County that, for me, the morning after the election was very, very psychologically important for me to catalog and list because I really needed something to feel good about.
Okay, so over to you, Mark. What else did Mike leave off his list that we should be looking at? And in general, like, what's your analysis of the 75% success rate of LACDP this cycle? It's pretty good.
Look, I am absolutely having a ball being chair of LACDP. It is a deliberative body, and I love to exchange ideas and let people talk. But Mike hit a lot of the highlights. I'm out here in the San Gabriel Valley, but I can tell you that the priority for me has always been how we elect people or who are going to protect people, like making sure Measure A passed, but also how we put people to work. How we put people to work in jobs that allow them to support themselves and their family and thrive in their local community, and not have to worry about survival. And electing people who are going to focus, out here in the San Gabriel Valley, we got folks who, we passed some excellent bond measures that are going to put people to work, local hire. That's really just has been such a big focus for me in getting involved in Dem politics, was that, that I felt labor, at least from my perspective, was disconnected from Democratic politics, and we needed to be more involved and be in those rooms and have these conversations. So when I'm meeting with, as a chair, I'm meeting with people that I never would be in a room with from the business world, and constantly talking about how we have to invest in our communities and put people to work, offer them careers. They want to go to college and be a lawyer and follow that path. That's great, but everyone should have the opportunity to thrive. And Kamala Harris's message around opportunity really, really resonated with me. And it's what I've been kind of saying from the beginning, is that we need to make sure we have an economy that works for everybody, from the first rung to the highest rung on the ladder, in our economy. So just look, I think Mike talked about Nick Schultz. Nick Schultz was one of the, obviously other than Carolyn Trousis, I'll say, but Nick Schultz was the best interview I ever did with a candidate. He was thoughtful, he was prepared, asked questions, wasn't about talking points. Getting George Whitesides elected and watching everyone rally around that space with George, Pilar, and Kip, and watching those three work together really, really hard. Unfortunately, we didn't get Kip there. But watching them work together and watching community come together and focus on races like that, that's inspiring to me, because what it means is we can continue to do this work and bringing people together. It's like I said, we've had some losses, but the 75% of these candidates, the vast majority of them, there Assembly delegates endorsed them. Those of you who were on that endorsement meeting that we did at the very end, we're up till like 3 a.m. It's good and it's fun, and I'm having a blast, and I look forward to working with everybody. But there's just a lot of great wins, and just looking forward to continuing to move LA County forward. And so it is just too many to mention, John, but I mean, my kid on a lot of them, and watching so many good young folks, Isabel and some of these folks, Scarlett Peralta, watching them get elected, really is heartening, and gives me, as a 60-year-old person, a lot of hope for the future.
Great. Carolyn, do you have something, some more to mention?
No, I mean, I think they mentioned everything I just wanted to say, first of all, Mark Ramos always says he's 60, but I refuse to believe that. And he knows that because I've told him that. But secondly, I would be remiss if I didn't say one of my friends and colleagues that has kept me sane, Brian Tabatabai, who's a West Covina City Council member. If you don't know him, he took on the big task of trying to unseat Blanca Rubio for her assembly seat, was backed by Supervisor Solis, really trying to go up against big oil and corporate dollars. And then, I think partially as a result of his kind of outspoken opposition to the incumbent and status quo, has lost his reelection bid for his city council seat. So he's a great progressive. I hope we see him again here. And I think he's a teacher and really of the community. And so
we're not letting him go away. We got to get him in
not
office again.
Yeah. Love Brian. Love
Yeah.
Brian. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for listing all that out. I know a lot of folks who are either super focused on national and or Santa Monica and don't always follow all the other cities and 87 other cities in LA County. So it's great to hear that rundown and know that we're surrounded by so many great progressive leaders. Okay, so now we finally made it to the Santa Monica election results. And so let me start. I said earlier, but I think this club may have had the only joyous election night victory celebration of the entire Democratic Party, because last Tuesday night, we were all gathered around in Santa Monica Brew Works watching CNN, and state after state was being called for Trump, and you're seeing, the Harry Enten up on the big board, and it wasn't looking good. And then I glanced down at my phone and refreshed lavote.net and saw what was going on at the first vote dump, and I just screamed, and I ran around the room yelling and telling everybody what had happened, and everyone was just jumping for joy. And eventually we just decided to turn off CNN altogether and just put the local lavote.net refreshing on a loop over and over again, because that was more happy than looking at what was happening nationally. So I want to just try to break down what happened here in Santa Monica, get to some of these themes that we've been talking about all night, kind of dancing around. And Mike Feinstein posed the question earlier on, which is, we saw voters breaking more conservatively nearly everywhere in the country. And even in Santa Monica, as has been pointed out, a majority of voters voted for Nathan Hochman over Gascon, and a majority voted for Prop 36. The incumbents ran on a very clear message. They were the team for public safety, safer Santa Monica, but they still lost. So why do we think Santa Monica voters rejected the Safer Santa Monica slate and instead elected a team of relative newcomers?
I mean, I think part of it, are you asking us?
Yeah.
Or is this a group question? Because I think
it was-
everyone here on this call has a lot of opinions, but
Right.
and we have the candidates here who talk. I mean, listen, we were all knocking on doors, we were talking to folks. I think that you have a highly educated electorate here. You have high information voters, and people did their research and their homework, and they saw the absolute puerile shenanigans, and sorry to say that, of the outgoing council members who were just defeated. We saw that promises were made to voters that weren't kept. We saw that this slate of folks had the majority for basically 3.5 years and could not get anything accomplished. So if you want people who have experience and who have credibility, even though these folks are newcomers, I think, their message resonated. Their experience and credentials in a town that's highly educated and highly involved, I think mattered, and showed that our voters are ready for maturity and good governance. And I think, it was close. We can put the results up on the screen. Let's not kid ourselves. It wasn't a blowout. We still worked for that. We worked very hard for that. So we have to continue to be organizing renters and educating voters about what it is that their city council is accomplishing for them, because we can't just show up every 4 years and ask for votes. We need to be having a much more extensive communication strategy so people know what local government is doing for them.
Yeah. So, do any of the candidates want to weigh in on this? No pressure if you don't want to go there right now, but open it up if anyone wants to. Okay. Well, I see Kevin has some thoughts, so let's hear what he has to say.
We in Santa Monica have two progressive issues that very powerfully unify us. We believe that renters must be protected. We believe that workers must be respected. And our opponents in this race this year demonstrated quite clearly they did not share that set of core values. 2 years ago, they entertained an idea that would have destroyed rent control in Santa Monica, mainly because they were ignorant of what rent control is, how it works, and how it's legally justified. They didn't bother to talk to the people who are experts in the field. They shot from the hip and they shot themselves in the foot, fortunately. They also showed tremendous disrespect for workers. When labor demonstrations in Santa Monica inconvenienced some of their constituents, instead of saying, well, the hotels really should be paying these people a fair wage, they blamed it on the workers and actually lied about what the workers were doing. And we saw violence happen last summer at one of the hotels in town, and that was never followed up on by the supposedly safer Santa Monica City Council. John, you opened the meeting by quoting very movingly from the end of Kamala Harris's concessions speech. There was something she said earlier in the day there at Howard University that really struck me. She said, "This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves." Well, we're blessed folks. We have the opportunity to do that in Santa Monica in a way that people in other communities aren't going to be able to do. The local media doesn't have a clue what happened. There was a story that ran in the Lookout yesterday under the headline something like "SMER retakes the city council." This wasn't just about SMER, although obviously the issue of renters' rights is one of our core progressive issues. This was about the fact that we all came together and worked together for the first time in many, many election cycles. And we proved that when we work together, we win. What we have to remember now is not to let ourselves fall back into that default formation, the infamous progressive circular firing squad. We have to remember these issues that unite us, and we need to commit ourselves to working together and working with our new council members to effectively implement these principles we hold so dear. So I think what happened here in Santa Monica is partly the fact that we do have core issues that unify us, that we've been behind for many, many years, decades. Many of us have worked on these, but also the fact we have just learned what it means to work together. Now we need to learn how to keep working together. And I'll commit myself to that, if you will.
Well said. Well, I'll definitely be doing the same. I thought this was interesting. On November 3rd, so 2 days before the election, Phil Brock posted on Facebook, and it was a video, but also in text. And he said, quote, "I've had enough. If the other side had any new ideas, they might have expressed them by now. Instead, they throw mud and demean their opponents. You do that when you have nothing of value to add." So, Carolyn, I want to throw it to you first here. Do you think that our team, the United Democratic side, ran a purely negative campaign to throw out the bombs, as Bill is sort of insinuating, or do you think that they presented new forward-thinking ideas that voters actually responded to?
I mean, I think our side presented new, cogent, and innovative forward-thinking ideas, and again, a contrast to the chaotic governance that we've seen. And I think that people resonated with that. I would also say that, let's be clear, none of our candidates put forward, to my knowledge, as I recall, the only thing I can recall is a potential press release about the money that was coming into the PAC for the other side, just pointing out, if this side is being funded by corporate landlords, non-union hotels, and big business, what does that say about what that side stands for? I love that our side kept being categorized as the corporate developer shills when not a dime was being taken in our PACs and by our candidates for that. So I would say I didn't see any negative campaigning from our candidates. I think what the public what the public needs to understand is that there are independent expenditure committees, and the candidates have no coordination, alignment, or strategy. In fact, they cannot. It is illegal to coordinate at all with those independent expenditure committees. And so none of us who were campaigning, working with the candidates, et cetera, had any knowledge of any negative campaigning that was going to happen. That was solely done by independent third parties. So I would say our candidates ran a very positive election, an election of priorities. If you look on all of our candidates' websites, they can speak for themselves. They all had very clear policy priorities that they spoke to in every forum. And I think, our four folks sounded the most intelligent, the most prepared, and the most innovative, period.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also thought it was interesting that the difference in vote totals between our four slate members is about 1,000 votes, which is very compact. And the difference between the safer slate members is over 4,000 between Phil and John Putnam. So SMER co-chair Danny Zane mentioned in the press that the lack of disparity between our candidates shows a slate discipline among voters, a demonstration that fundamentals are back from before. And meanwhile, on the other side, online conspiracy theorists, including Oscar himself, had all kinds of theories about why our candidates finished so close together, including ballot harvesting, which is legal if we had done it, but as far as I know, we didn't do that. And I don't want to get into the fine points of our campaign strategy because we have more elections to run in the future. But just in general, what does the compactness of our slate's results tell you about their campaign, about the campaign strategy? How were they able to, keep the slate together and not have a big drop off?
For me, again, sorry, I'm doing too much talking. Would love to hear from others, but I think it was a very disciplined group of four that worked together in a team mentality that all got the endorsements. And I think the progressive endorsements, there was no division there. Whereas you saw the other side, there was a slight division with this Blue Wave Democratic Club. That's the upstart, moderate Democrats that we all have heard about, and the police and fire who endorsed an individual that was not on the safer slate. So I think there was a little bit of split there. Our candidates were disciplined, but again, I wish Unite Here were here because they would say that Santa Monica is unique in that we've had this progressive coalition for decades, and we have infrastructure in place from groups like Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights, Santa Monica Democratic Club, SEP's decades-long involvement in our community, knowledge of our community, networks in our community. And this is not just like I created a group to get some votes to say that I'm aligned with something that I think people will like. This is the testament to community organizing and a testament to true coalition building, and getting out there early, like Natalia said, and making sure that folks were aligned from the start.
Great. So we'll bring in Mark and Mike back in here. So do you Well, this is a question that came up earlier, and I'm very interested in how it plays out because in Santa Monica, we were accused of in some way being untruthful about the fact that our candidates were the only ones endorsed by the Democratic Party. And it comes back to this thing about they registered as Democrats, but they're not endorsed by the Democratic Party. And some people just aren't able to understand that. Mike, you were talking on the LA podcast about blue MAGAs. I thought that was a really interesting term, and I think it fits in here. So just thinking about this idea of like, you have to be a Democrat to get elected or else in LA or else people will not vote for you. So how do we differentiate the difference between uh forget about progressive and far left and all of that, but just a Democrat who is endorsed by the Democratic Party versus these people who are coming out endorsed by Thrive and the Blue Wave Democratic Club and so forth, who are really they can call themselves moderate, but they're really conservative Democrats, and something like a Joe Manchin type is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean it's a growing phenomenon, right? I mean, you've experienced it in Santa Monica before you experienced it in Santa Monica. They experienced it in Culver City, right? The A-Dem slate I ran on was the progressive one, and everybody won, and then the other group formed, their own Dem club. They have, some electeds from their club, but generally speaking, the strategy has not yet been successful, right? It's a smart one because they can put Democrat on some of their mailers, but it has not yet been successful in most cases, right? Kevin De Leon tried it on the east side and it did not work. Ethan Weaver tried it for the LA City Council with the Blue Wave Democratic Club endorsement, and it did not work. It's a potentially effective strategy on their part. It's smart for them to do it, but and it's going to require more of an effort on our part to communicate with voters about who really is the Democratic candidate, the Democratic-backed candidate. I think we probably need to rely on the party to help make that distinction because people are going to try to obscure that going forward. But it does show how, whether it's the red MAGA nationally or the blue MAGA locally, they are very clever and they're always trying to change the rules and the expectations. So we need to keep in front of them.
And Mark, what's your take on this? Yeah.
Look, in Burbank, we had two candidates who had recently registered as Democrats put out a mailer calling themselves the Democratic Choice, right, and using a Democratic logo. One of them's going to get elected. I think he's going to finish second to Constantine there. So just so happened in that same window, we had put out a mailer in the city there with the officially endorsed candidates. In Pomona, we had in the council race, we had a former Democrat of the Year use the logo. And factually say, yes, a former Democrat of the Year for LACDP, but was not the endorsed candidate. So the mincing of the words in these types of things, it's kind of like saying, teachers support when it's not the teachers union, it's just two teachers who live around the corner. It's kind of like that idea, right? But I can tell you that one thing that we did, and I get all the mail here at my house for all the mail that we did throughout the county. I think we did something like 88 mailers for folks, not including some other ones. We penetrated deeper into the county and the smaller cities, I think, than in recent memory. I got a lot of text messages and calls from people saying, Mark, thank you, right, for sending mail into Torrance or Southgate. It was a real emphasis for me being chair, not coming from the city of Los Angeles, right? I understand I'm the first chair in 50 years not to be from the city of Los Angeles, right? I'm from the San Gabriel Valley, lived my whole life east of the 710. So, it was important to me to make sure the whole county felt represented. And I really enjoy and believe in small local government. I think it's great for candidates. I think it's the form of government that folks are going to see the most immediate change in front of them. They're going to see the potholes filled immediately, right? So I think this thing kind of continues. People will continue to mince words, but if we're effective at the party and we're getting our message out, we're able to raise some money, continue to support our local candidates. I think we can tamp a lot of it down by making sure that we maybe even tweak the wording on some of these things to officially endorse Democrats. Maybe we begin to use different little wording here and there to call these folks out. Some of those folks in Burbank and Pomona, we followed it up with text messages to re-inform the voters, because texting is obviously a lot cheaper. Digital ads, just trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get behind the candidates that we endorse. But I don't think this stops. And I think, look, what imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? I think there's some value in the logo. There's some value in the party endorsement that people are willing to chase it, right? I think there's something to be said there too. But we will continue to kind of refine and target more in on our brand to make sure that we're actually doing a better job of supporting our local candidates, because 75% is great, but 100% is always the target.
Totally. Well, let me take a moment to join the chorus on this, because I really want to thank you for, like you said, the mail that came to Santa Monica that said, here are the official endorsed candidates, because we've never gotten that before in Santa Monica. And in our race, I had been saying from the beginning that the most important thing we can instill to our voters is these 4 people were endorsed by the Democratic Party, period. Because so many voters don't need to know anything else about the race except for that one piece of information. And so we hit them over and over again with it on our end. And to see it come from you guys too was really, really helpful to our campaign. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for endorsing the same candidates. Thank you for right before the election sending the letter to our council about the horrible decisions that they made to make pillows and sleeping bags illegal for unhoused people. So we really appreciate the support from LACDP. That it really means
a lot of credit to Carolyn for the letter, and keeping me on my toes. But look, I'll make a pitch. You're always free to contribute to LACDP, so we can do more of it. We have practically zero federal dollars at LACDP. We couldn't do any mail for George Whitesides or Derek Tran. And we have a lot of people in LA County who will give to other candidates or other Democratic organizations around the country and don't give to their local county party. We are always starving for dollars to be better and more effective. So if you're ever looking to contribute to a Democratic organization, please always consider donating to LA County Democratic Party. We put every single penny to good use.
Thank you so much. Okay, so President Trump and his supporters have been talking a lot about having a mandate to enact their agenda. Of course, they won the popular vote 50-48. And meanwhile, in Santa Monica, if you add up the totals from the 8 candidates on the 2 slates, our side won 52% of the vote, and the safer slate won 41% of the vote. That's a double-digit lead, 11%. So my question is, what mandate does our United Democratic slate, the 4 candidates who got elected into city council, plus also Carolyn and Jesse, and for that matter, Lana, what mandate do we have to lead in Santa Monica, if any? And don't answer this if it is a violation of the Brown Act, of course, but can we point to any issues that we should be bringing up for discussion right away, or topics? Not how you're going to vote on it, but are there any topics that come to mind right away?
You want me to say something, or do you want the candidates to say something?
Why don't you kick it off and see what the candidates want to comment on?
Look, I mean, I'm very cognizant that I'll just speak about myself. I have to run for re-election. So we've just elected 4 really great allies, but we have to actually get something accomplished. It's great to say that nothing was done under a stymieing majority of slightly more conservative folks, but we got the votes. Let's get work done, period. That means to me making visible progress on homelessness, That means to me making visible progress on infrastructure improvements to make sure our streets are safe. And what does safety mean, and how do we talk about that? And then the issue you'll always hear me talk about, for those who don't remember, I was on the rent control board before I was on the council. I won't get into specifics, but I think you all know the items I put forward last year around renter protections. We still have more work to do on that. And then, of course, figuring out our strategic plan for how we spend our GS money now that we have 6 folks or maybe more who believe that housing solves homelessness. So I'll leave it at that.
Any of our new elected council members want to weigh in on this, or
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say, we ran on a platform that was unabashedly pro-housing, pro-worker, pro-renter, and pro-multimodal streets. And when to Mike's question earlier about how we discussed crime and safety, we ran on a message of being smarter on crime and public safety than just simply adding more cops. All of us want it, and we all publicly stated this throughout the campaign. All of us want to see a fully funded police department. All of us want to support and do support our police department. But in a tight budget crunch, how we spend our revenues matter. And where are we going to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to public safety initiatives? And so, without getting into specifics, all of us ran on expanding use of technology and expanding, thinking about public safety in a more holistic approach that's inclusive of code enforcement and the fire department, the city attorney's office. I think on other issues, there was a lot of demagoguing around single family homes and what implementation of SB 10 and how SB 9 will affect our R1 neighborhoods. I think the fear mongering around that was out of control, and I appreciate those of you who helped counter that messaging, particularly you, Mayor McCune. That was very helpful. The parking tax, Measure K, to fund street safety infrastructure and public safety and emergency services was absolutely panned by pollsters, but it won with 75% of the vote. So I think that shows there's a hunger from the voters in Santa Monica for these types of issues, and not just a single issue slate. And I think the last thing I'd say is when talking about crime, local crime stats have held steady for years. Certainly, there's been aberrations up and down for various types of crimes, particularly during the pandemic. But Santa Monica remains a relatively safe place to live and work and play and everything compared to, comparable cities of our size and location and amenities, services. And that said, there's certainly a meaningful level of property crime and mental illness on our streets and substance use issues, particularly abuse in our public spaces, that are causing folks to feel unsafe. And we have to acknowledge that as progressives, and we have to, assure the voters that we also care about that. This isn't, one side can't control the messaging on that or the issue. And I think the voters did see incumbents who didn't make any measurable progress on any of these issues. And so while I do think we have a mandate to implement a lot of our progressive agenda, particularly around housing and renters and workers, education, the environment, I think we also need to show meaningful movement on issues that our opposition solely talked about. I think if voters gave us a mandate to do anything, it's to look to Santa Monica of 2050 and not 1950.
Well said, Dan. Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, can I just jump in briefly here?
Of course.
Yeah, I echo what a lot of what's been said before. I think some of the issues that have been playing out at the statewide and national level are also reflected here locally. and specifically with cost of living and housing, those are really crucial issues. I mean, think about how many folks who are going to graduate from Santa Monica High School here in the next 4 years are realistically going to have an opportunity to live in the city where they grew up. How many folks are being priced out of our city right now and are falling out of housing because they can't afford their rent? These are all issues that we talked about at length at community forums, and certainly with respect to the criticism of us not having a platform, just listen to the robust discussion we had at the Democratic Club debate, Streets for All debate, many other places where we laid out our platform in great detail. So I'm really looking forward to working with a group of colleagues who have really unique and fresh perspectives on tackling the affordability crisis, housing, renter protections, and issues that are really at the heart of everything. And I do also want to echo thanks to former Mayor Kevin McKeown and our former Mayor Mike Feinstein for getting out there in the press, and John Katz, you too, and so many others for really putting yourselves on the line in the public eye to stand up for truth and to stand up for what's right. So again, this was really a community effort, a team effort from the broader family of Democrats here in this room and elsewhere. Again, thanks to everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's very we don't have the opportunity on the national level, but we do here to have this moment that happens every 2 years where we get to stop talking about the politics of these elections and the personalities and the things that we had to say about the incumbents that are going out now. And we can now change to focus on the policy agendas that you all ran on. And it's very exciting to go to, in a couple of weeks, the election season will be over and you guys will just be sitting there in the council on the dais doing the work of the city, and that's really exciting and we're looking forward to it. Before we go, I want to give Mike an opportunity to plug his new endeavor with the podcast that he's running, and he's on 2 podcasts now. Do you want to just tell everyone what's going on there?
Oh, thanks, John. I appreciate that. So yeah, I host a solo podcast, What's Next Los Angeles, where I try to do deep dives on public policy issues around Los Angeles County, not just LA City, including statewide issues. And I try to profile and lift up new ideas and new leaders. So a lot of your new elected officials will be coming on, I hope. And then I am now joining the cast of LA Podcast, which was on hiatus for a while, a news and public affairs discussion program that I host with Alyssa Walker and Rachel Reyes and a few others. Both shows now sponsored by our great local progressive organization, LA Forward, trying to increase and promote channels for progressive ideas and dialogue and spread them around. Thanks.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have like a really good local politics discussion at that level. I mean, I try to do with our Dem Club meetings the same sorts of conversations, and we have our audience for that. But to be able to do it on a podcast level with audience and listening to learn more about this stuff is just really valuable for the whole community. So thanks for doing that. Everyone should go check it out.
One of my recent guests on the show, where we discussed progressives all around Los Angeles County, is your own Carolyn Terrosis.
Yes, very cool. Okay, so I think
Can
that
we get a link to that podcast?
Yeah, sure. Does somebody want to? A lot of great people putting stuff in the chat. Maybe someone can do that for me. But yeah, the 2 great. I mean, What's Next is Mike's podcast, like you said, and the LA podcast is like everyone who is interested in the local level of politics. Even if you're only interested in Santa Monica, this is such a great podcast to listen to because you just get a really good flavor of everything going on in our community in the political realm. It's really cool. Okay, so thank you to our panelists. Let's thank them, everybody. Let's do a round of applause, I guess, for our panel. A muted applause. And just one last thing, reminder of our holiday party. It's going to be December 8th. We'll come back with a specific time. We're working it out with BrewWorks right now, but it's our toy drive. Bring a toy. We're going to work with the church in Ocean Park to get these toys delivered to children in need in our community. And it'll be great to chat, in a totally non-formal, non-recorded context where we can catch up with each other. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for a great 2024. It's a mixed election result in terms of everything we have to really consider as Democrats. But here in Santa Monica, we did our part. That's because of all of you. So thank you to everybody who volunteered, knocking on doors, electioneering on election day, phone calling, texting, all the great work we did. It all came out, and we now have the opportunity, like I said, like others have said, to be this beacon for the whole Democratic Party. They're going to look to see what we do in Santa Monica and see if that's going to translate to other parts. So thank you all for your role in this, and we'll see you at the BrewWorks next month. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, y'all.